My name is Ethan Mitchell, 35, and I built my business from nothing while my sister Rachel lived off family support. For years, I helped pay her mortgage despite her constant belittling. Last month at Mom's birthday dinner, everything changed. Rachel's jealousy finally erupted when she screamed, "You're not welcome here, you're just jealous." I simply smiled and replied with a truth bomb that left everyone speechless. Before I continue this story, let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button if you want more stories about family dynamics gone wrong. Growing up in our middle-class Boston neighborhood, Rachel and I shared the typical sibling dynamic, occasional allies, frequent competitors. 3 years older than me, Rachel always commanded attention. She was the outgoing one with the perfect grades, the lead in school plays, and seemingly effortless popularity. I was quieter, more introspective, preferring computers and books to spotlight moments. Our relatively stable childhood shattered when our parents divorced. I was 12, Rachel 15. The split wasn't amicable. Dad had been having an affair with his secretary. The oldest cliché in the book. Mom was devastated, and in her pain, she latched onto Rachel as her emotional support. I don't blame Mom for this. Rachel naturally stepped into the role of the strong one, while I retreated further into my shell. Dad moved across the country to California with his new girlfriend, sending child support but rarely visiting. His absence created a vacuum in our home that fundamentally changed our family dynamic. Rachel became Mom's confidant, her shoulder to cry on, and inevitably, her favorite. It wasn't something openly acknowledged, but the signs were unmistakable: more attention, more praise, more leeway with rules. High school was particularly tough. While Rachel thrived as student council president and valedictorian, I struggled socially and maintained average grades. Not because I couldn't do better, but because no one expected me to. When Rachel got accepted to Boston University with a partial scholarship, there was a week-long celebration. When I got into a decent state school for computer science, Mom simply said, "That's nice, honey," before returning to helping Rachel plan her dorm decor. College became my turning point. Away from Rachel's shadow, I discovered my aptitude for tech solutions and business concepts. I worked part-time jobs while studying, saved aggressively, and began building what would eventually become Mitchell Tech Solutions. By graduation, I had 3 reliable clients and enough savings to rent a small office space instead of joining a corporate firm. Meanwhile, Rachel's life took a different turn. She met Marcus during her sophomore year, and they married immediately after graduation. By 25, she had 2 children, Emma and Josh, and had abandoned her career plans to become a full-time mom. Their family looked picture-perfect on social media, but the reality was quite different. Marcus worked as a mid-level manager at an insurance company, making decent but not exceptional money. Rachel insisted on living in an upscale neighborhood they couldn't quite afford, sending the kids to private schools, and maintaining appearances that stretched their finances thin. My mother helped them whenever possible, often dipping into her retirement savings. I, on the other hand, lived modestly while reinvesting in my business. By 30, Mitchell Tech Solutions had 20 employees and a growing reputation in the Boston tech scene. By 33, we'd expanded to 3 cities and I had finally started enjoying the fruits of my labor: a comfortable condo, reliable investments, and financial security. That's when the first direct request for help came from Rachel. It was framed as a temporary situation. Marcus had unexpected medical bills, the kids needed tuition payments, and they were 3 months behind on their mortgage. The bank was threatening foreclosure. Despite our complicated history, they were family. I paid the overdue amount and the next 3 months, telling them to use that time to get back on their feet. 6 months later, another crisis emerged. Then another. 2 years ago, I finally sat down with them and worked out an arrangement. I would pay half their mortgage each month, with the understanding they would use that breathing room to pay down other debts and build savings. Rachel accepted my help with a mixture of gratitude and resentment. Each check seemed to both relieve and humiliate her. As my company continued to grow, securing major contracts and industry recognition, Rachel's subtle digs became more frequent. At family gatherings, she would make comments about selling out to corporate America, or imply my success came from ruthless business tactics rather than hard work. She would introduce me to her friends as her workaholic brother who's never around, despite my regular attendance at family events. Mom noticed the tension but avoided addressing it directly. "Your sister's just under a lot of pressure with the kids," she would say when I mentioned Rachel's behavior. "She doesn't mean anything by it." But the undercurrent of resentment kept building. When I bought a new car, nothing flashy, just a reliable upgrade after driving the same vehicle for 10 years, Rachel commented that some people need expensive things to feel important. When I mentioned a business trip to Europe, she rolled her eyes and muttered something about, "must be nice." I tried to be understanding. Rachel had built her identity around being the successful, perfect daughter. Watching her younger brother achieve the financial success she and Marcus struggled for must have been difficult. But her increasing hostility made our interactions tense and uncomfortable, setting the stage for what happened at Mom's birthday dinner. Mom's 65th birthday seemed like the perfect occasion for a family gathering. Despite the growing tension with Rachel, I was determined to make the evening special for Mom. After considerable thought, I chose a delicate sapphire necklace that matched Mom's eyes, paired with tickets to the symphony she'd always wanted to attend. I'd take her myself, making it an experience rather than just a gift. The week before the dinner, Rachel called to finalize details. The conversation started pleasantly enough, but quickly revealed the underlying strain. "We're starting at 6, Rachel said. "Can you actually be on time for once? Mom shouldn't have to wait on her birthday." I bit back a retort about having never been late to a family event. "I'll be there at 5:30 to help set up." "Don't bother. I've got it handled," she replied quickly. "Just be on time with your gift. Nothing too extravagant, right?" We agreed to keep things reasonable. We hadn't agreed to any such thing, but I let it slide. "Is there anything you need me to bring? Wine? Dessert?" "Just yourself," Rachel said with forced brightness. "Oh, is Jessica coming?" Jessica, my girlfriend of 8 months, had met my family only twice. The first time, Rachel had monopolized the conversation with stories of my childhood embarrassments. The second time, she'd quizzed Jessica about her career plans in a way that felt more like an interrogation than friendly interest. "Not this time," I answered. "She has a work commitment." The truth was that Jessica had politely declined, saying she didn't want to create additional tension on Mom's special day. She was perceptive enough to recognize the complicated dynamics at play. "That's too bad," Rachel said, not sounding disappointed at all. Next time. As I drove to Rachel's house that Saturday evening, I couldn't shake a feeling of apprehension. Their home was in Brookline, an expensive suburb they'd stretched themselves thin to afford. The colonial-style house with its manicured lawn and stylish exterior projected success and stability, an image I knew cost them significantly more than they could comfortably manage. I parked my Audi behind Uncle Frank's more modest sedan. Rachel had once commented that my car was unnecessarily flashy, though it was far from the luxury vehicle I could have afforded. The front door opened before I reached it, revealing my mother with a warm smile. "There's my boy," she said, pulling me into a hug. She looked elegant in a blue dress I hadn't seen before. Right on time as always. I returned her embrace, breathing in her familiar perfume. "Happy birthday, Mom. You look beautiful." Behind her, Rachel appeared in the doorway, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "Finally here. Everyone else arrived ages ago." I checked my watch, 5:50 p.m., 10 minutes before the stated time. Rather than point this out, I smiled and handed her the bottle of wine I'd brought despite her telling me not to. "Thanks," she said, barely glancing at the label of what I knew was a good vintage. "Come on in." The house was impeccably decorated, as always. Rachel had a talent for interior design, creating spaces that looked like they belonged in magazines. Today, birthday decorations added a festive touch to the dining room, with flowers and candles arranged artfully on the table. Uncle Frank and Aunt Martha sat in the living room, engaged in conversation with Rachel's husband Marcus. Their son, my cousin Tyler, was showing something on his phone to Rachel's children, 13-year-old Emma and 10-year-old Josh. "Ethan!" Uncle Frank called, rising to clap me on the shoulder. "Just telling Marcus here about that article I saw about your company. Impressive stuff, kid." I noticed Rachel's slight frown as she disappeared into the kitchen. Uncle Frank had always been supportive of my business ventures, occasionally even referring clients my way. His genuine enthusiasm typically triggered Rachel's discomfort. "Nothing extraordinary," I said modestly. "Just steady growth." "Don't be so humble," Aunt Martha chimed in. Frank showed me that piece in the Boston Business Journal. Being named one of the top tech consultancies in New England is quite an achievement. Marcus shifted awkwardly in his seat. Once a confident, outgoing man, he'd become noticeably more subdued over the years. Financial stress and Rachel's increasing dissatisfaction had taken their toll. "Congratulations," he offered. "Things are going well at the insurance company too. Might be up for a promotion soon." The way his eyes didn't quite meet mine suggested this might be news to me, but not necessarily the truth. Mom joined us, skillfully changing the subject to her volunteer work at the local library. I caught her glance between Rachel and me, her awareness of the tension evident. She'd always played peacekeeper, a role that had become increasingly challenging. Rachel called us to the table about 20 minutes later. The spread was impressive: roast beef, glazed vegetables, fresh bread, and multiple side dishes arranged beautifully on her best china. "Everything looks amazing, Rachel," Mom said proudly. "You've outdone yourself." "It was nothing," Rachel replied, though her tired eyes betrayed the effort it had taken. "I wanted everything to be perfect for your birthday." As we took our seats, I noticed Rachel had placed me between Uncle Frank and Cousin Tyler, as far from Mom as possible. Mom was positioned at the head of the table with Rachel at her right hand, a small but telling detail. "Before we eat," Rachel announced, "I just want to say how special it is to host this dinner for Mom's birthday. Family means everything to me, and I'm so happy we could all be here together in our home." The emphasis on "our home" wasn't lost on me. It was a reminder that despite my financial contribution to their mortgage, this was her domain. I caught Marcus glancing at me with an unreadable expression before quickly looking away. As Rachel finished her little speech and began serving, I couldn't help but wonder how the evening would unfold. The undercurrents were already swirling beneath the surface of polite conversation, and we hadn't even finished the appetizers. The first course, a butternut squash soup I later learned came from an expensive gourmet shop rather than Rachel's kitchen, was served with flourish. Rachel beamed as everyone complimented the flavor. "It's all about using quality ingredients," she said, as though she'd made it from scratch. "I always tell Marcus that some things are worth spending extra on." Uncle Frank turned to me while spooning his soup. "So Ethan, that new client you mentioned last month, how did that deal work out?" Before I could answer, Rachel interjected, "Let's not talk business at Mom's birthday dinner. This is a celebration, not a networking event." Mom patted Rachel's hand but said, "Actually, I'd love to hear about Ethan's work. I'm proud of what he's accomplished." Rachel's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "Of course, Mom. We're all proud of Ethan's ambition." I described the new contract briefly, downplaying its significance despite it being a major milestone for my company. Years of experience had taught me that detailing my successes around Rachel only led to tension. "That's wonderful, honey," Mom said genuinely. "Your father would have been so proud." Dad had passed away 3 years ago from a heart attack, having reconnected with us somewhat in his later years. Rachel's jaw clenched at the mention of our father. "I'm sure he would be." Dad always did appreciate a good businessman, didn't he? Even left his family for one. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. Rachel's comparison between me and our father's abandonment was both unfair and intentionally hurtful. Rachel, Marcus said quietly, a rare moment of him stepping in. She waved him off. I'm just saying, success in business isn't everything. Some of us chose family first. Aunt Martha, ever the peacemaker like Mom, quickly changed the subject. Emma, tell us about your science project. Your mother mentioned you won an award? As Emma launched into an explanation of her experiment, I caught Mom's apologetic glance. I gave her a small smile to indicate I wasn't upset. This was her day, and I wouldn't let Rachel's barbs ruin it. The main course arrived, and the conversation shifted to safer topics. Local news. A recent movie, Tyler's college plans. I began to think we might make it through dinner without further incident. Then Uncle Frank, meaning well, brought up summer vacations. Martha and I are thinking of renting a place on Cape Cod this August. Nothing fancy, just a week away from the city heat. That sounds lovely, Mom said. It's been years since I've been to the Cape. I saw an opportunity to do something nice. Why don't you join them, Mom? My treat. You deserve a vacation. Rachel set down her fork with a clink against the plate. Mom doesn't need your charity, Ethan. If she wants to go to the Cape, Marcus and I would be happy to arrange something. Marcus looked startled, likely aware their budget couldn't accommodate such an expense. It's not charity, I clarified calmly. It's a birthday gift extension. Of course it is, Rachel said with a brittle laugh. Just like the symphony tickets and that necklace I saw you hide when you came in. Always showing off with expensive gifts the rest of us can't compete with. Rachel, please, Mom interjected. Ethan is just being generous. He's being showy, Rachel insisted, color rising in her cheeks. He loves reminding everyone how successful he is while the rest of us struggle with normal life expenses. Uncle Frank cleared his throat uncomfortably. I think a vacation sounds great for everyone. Maybe we could make it a family affair. I tried to salvage the conversation. That's a great idea. A house big enough for everyone would be fun. And let me guess, Rachel said, her voice rising slightly, you'll graciously offer to pay for that too? So we can all feel indebted to the family's success story? Marcus placed a hand on her arm. Ratch, not now. She shook him off. No, I want to know. Are you planning to buy a vacation home next, Ethan? Another possession to remind us all of the disparity? The question caught me off guard because I had, in fact, been looking at investment properties that could double as vacation homes. It wasn't something I'd mentioned to anyone in the family. I'd been considering some real estate investments, I admitted carefully. But that's not relevant to Uncle Frank's vacation idea. Rachel pushed back her chair abruptly. Of course you are. A condo in the city isn't enough. The successful business isn't enough. The fancy car isn't enough. You need more and more. And you need us all to know about it. Rachel! Mom exclaimed. That's enough. But Rachel was past the point of restraint, years of resentment spilling over. Do you know how hard it is? Having him show up with his perfect life, his perfect career, making the rest of us feel inadequate? And now he wants to buy a vacation home while we can barely. She stopped suddenly, realizing she'd nearly revealed too much about their financial situation. While you can barely what? Aunt Martha asked gently. Rachel's eyes flashed with anger and embarrassment. While some of us prioritize our children's education and family needs over material possessions. But Ethan wouldn't understand that, would he? No kids, no real responsibilities beyond himself. The characterization stung. I'd worked 70-hour weeks for years building my business, often foregoing personal relationships and certainly not living a carefree bachelor lifestyle. I think that's unfair, I said quietly. Unfair? Rachel's voice rose further. You want to talk about unfair? Try raising 2 children in today's economy. Try maintaining a home and a family while you jet off to business meetings and buy whatever catches your fancy." The children had gone silent, watching with wide eyes. Josh looked on the verge of tears at his mother's outburst. "Rachel, the kids," Marcus murmured. "They should know," Rachel snapped. "They should know that their uncle values showing off his wealth more than actually being present in their lives." This accusation was particularly galling. I made a point of attending every school play, recital, and sports game I possibly could. I remembered birthdays with thoughtful gifts and took both kids for Uncle Days, at least monthly. Mom stood up, her birthday dinner now thoroughly derailed. "Rachel, stop this right now. Ethan has been nothing but generous and loving to this family." "Oh, here we go," Rachel said bitterly. "Saint Ethan, the family's savior. Always ready with his checkbook to remind us how inadequate we are." The room went deadly silent. Even Rachel seemed shocked by the venom in her words. I remained outwardly calm though my heart was pounding. Years of business negotiations had taught me to maintain composure in tense situations. Rachel, perhaps sensing she'd crossed the line but unwilling to back down, delivered her final blow. "You know what, Ethan? You're not welcome here. You're just jealous of our family, our home. What we've built. You and your money can leave." The dining room froze in shocked silence. Emma's hand covered her mouth, while Josh stared down at his plate. Uncle Frank and Aunt Martha exchanged alarmed glances. Mom looked utterly devastated, her birthday celebration shattered beyond repair. I felt a strange calm wash over me. After years of walking on eggshells around Rachel's fragile ego, of downplaying my successes to spare her feelings, of quietly helping her family while accepting her ingratitude, something finally snapped into perfect clarity. This dynamic wasn't going to change unless I changed it. I deliberately set my napkin beside my plate, took a slow sip of water, and looked directly at my sister. Her face was flushed with anger, but there was also a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. As if she hadn't expected to go so far and wasn't sure what would happen next. "Sure," I said, my voice even and controlled. "Then you don't need my help with the mortgage." The words hung in the air like suspended glass about to shatter. Rachel's face drained of color so rapidly I thought she might faint. Marcus dropped his fork, creating a jarring clatter against his plate. Uncle Frank gave a low whistle under his breath. What are you talking about?" Rachel stammered, her voice suddenly small. Mom looked between us in confusion. "Mortgage? Ethan, what does that mean?" Marcus, surprisingly, was the one who broke. "Rachel, we have to tell them. We can't keep pretending." "Tell us what?" Mom asked, concern etching deeper lines into her face. Rachel remained frozen, so Marcus continued, his shoulders slumping in defeat. "Ethan has been paying half our mortgage for the past 2 years. Without him, we would have lost the house. And we're 3 months behind on the car payments," he added quietly. "And Emma's school tuition." Mom's hand went to her heart. "Rachel, is this true? Why didn't you tell me you were struggling so badly?" Rachel's shock transformed back into anger, though now it seemed more defensive than aggressive. "This is exactly why. Because of how you're looking at me right now, with disappointment. The successful daughter failing while the underachiever becomes the family hero." "No one thinks that," Mom protested. "Everyone thinks that," Rachel shouted, tears forming in her eyes. "Everyone has always thought that Ethan was the smart one, the one with potential. I was just the pretty, popular one who peaked in high school." I blinked in surprise. This was so contrary to my experience of our childhood that for a moment, I wondered if we had grown up in the same house. "Rachel," I said carefully, "you were valedictorian. You got a scholarship to Boston University. Everyone always said you could do anything. And then I chose family," she shot back. "I chose Marcus and the kids instead of a career. And suddenly all anyone cared about was your business and your success." Uncle Frank cleared his throat. "I think there's been some misunderstanding about how you both perceive your places in the family. There's no misunderstanding, Rachel insisted. Ethan swoops in with his money, making grand gestures, while hiding the fact that we've needed his help just to keep our heads above water. Do you know how humiliating that is? More humiliating than telling your brother who's been paying your mortgage that he's not welcome in the house he helps pay for? The words came out before I could stop them. Marcus put his head in his hands. I lost my job 6 months ago, he admitted to the shock table. The promotion is actually an interview for a position that pays less than I was making before. We've been living on credit cards and Ethan's help. Mom looked stricken. Why didn't either of you say anything? I could have helped. You're on a fixed income, Mom, I said gently. That's why I stepped in. To be the hero, Rachel sniffed. To help my sister and her family, I corrected firmly. But I'm starting to wonder if that was a mistake. What's that supposed to mean? Rachel demanded. It means I've paid over $30,000 toward your mortgage in the past 2 years, I explained, keeping my voice level. I've never mentioned it, never held it over your head. Never asked for anything in return. And yet you treat me like I'm some villain flaunting my success to make you feel bad. Aunt Martha, ever the mediator, tried to intervene. I think everyone's emotions are running high. Perhaps we should take a break and... No, I said, surprising myself with my firmness. This needs to be addressed. I'm tired of being the family scapegoat, while also being the financial safety net. Scapegoat? Rachel laughed bitterly. You've always been Mom's favorite. Mom gasped. Rachel. That's not true at all. It is true, Rachel insisted. After the divorce, you were always praising his resilience, his focus. Why can't you be more understanding like your brother? Ethan never complains about doing his chores. And you were always the perfect daughter, I countered. The one whose achievements were celebrated while mine were barely acknowledged. The one who could do no wrong in Mom's eyes. Mom looked between us, distress evident on her face. I never meant to make either of you feel less loved or appreciated. I'm so sorry if I did. Rachel wiped angrily at a tear that had escaped down her cheek. Well, now everyone knows our shameful secret. Happy birthday, Mom. Sorry your disappointing daughter couldn't even host your birthday without financial help from your perfect son. Rachel, stop it, Marcus said with unexpected firmness. This isn't about your brother or your mother. We made choices, financial choices, that put us in this position. Rachel stared at her husband as if he'd betrayed her. In a way, he had, by speaking the truth they'd both been avoiding. I stood up slowly. I think I should go. This evening has gone far enough off the rails. Ethan, please, Mom began. It's okay, Mom, I assured her. We'll talk tomorrow. I still want to take you to the symphony next weekend. You're leaving? Rachel asked, and I couldn't tell if she was relieved or upset. Yes, I said simply. But we need to have a serious conversation about the financial arrangement going forward. I'm happy to help family in need, but not if it comes with resentment and hostility. So you're cutting us off? The panic in her voice was unmistakable. I didn't say that. But things need to change. I looked at my niece and nephew, who appeared thoroughly uncomfortable. Emma, Josh, I'm sorry about all this. None of it is your fault, and I love you both very much. Emma, always the more outspoken of the two, asked in a small voice, Are you mad at us? Uncle Ethan? Not at all, I assured her. Adults sometimes have complicated feelings that have nothing to do with you. I kissed Mom on the cheek. I'll call you tomorrow. Happy birthday. Uncle Frank stood as well. I think maybe we should head out too. Give you folks some space. As I walked toward the door, I heard Marcus say quietly to Rachel, We need to talk. Really talk. On the porch, Mom caught up to me. Ethan, wait. I turned to her, suddenly exhausted by the emotional confrontation. I had no idea you were helping them financially, she said. Or that they were struggling so much. They wanted to keep up appearances, I explained. And I was happy to help, but not to be their emotional punching bag. Mom nodded slowly. I think there's a lot more to unpack about how you and your sister perceive your childhoods. Things I need to take responsibility for. Maybe, I acknowledged. But not tonight. Tonight's supposed to be about celebrating you. She smiled sadly. Some celebration. We'll make it up to you, I promised, giving her a gentle hug. I love you, Mom. I love you too, she replied. Both of you, so much. As I drove home, the weight of years of unspoken resentments and misunderstandings sat heavy on my shoulders. But underneath that weight was something unexpected, a sense of relief. The truth, painful as it was, had finally been spoken aloud. The drive home from Rachel's house was surreal. Streets and traffic lights passed in a blur as my mind replayed the dinner disaster on loop. The look on Rachel's face when I mentioned the mortgage. Mom's confusion. Marcus's defeated confession about his job loss. The children's discomfort at witnessing adult conflict they couldn't fully understand. When I arrived at my condo, I found Jessica curled up on my couch with a book. She looked up with a smile that quickly faded when she saw my expression. That bad? She asked, setting her book aside. I sank down beside her with a humorless laugh. Catastrophic would be the word. As I recounted the evening's events, Jessica listened without interruption, her hand resting supportively on mine. Unlike me, she came from a small, close-knit family with refreshingly straightforward dynamics. The complexity of my family situation often bewildered her. So your sister has been resenting you for your success while simultaneously depending on your financial help, she summarized when I finished. Apparently so, I confirmed. And believing I was the favorite child, which is honestly baffling to me. Jessica squeezed my hand. Perception is powerful. You both grew up in the same house but experienced completely different childhoods. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. I'm sorry about tonight. Rachel's upset, but we need to talk. Can we meet tomorrow? After consulting with Jessica, I suggested a coffee shop halfway between our homes for 2 p.m. Neutral territory seemed wise. The next morning brought a tearful call from Mom, who was still processing the revelations from dinner. I had no idea you two felt so differently about your upbringing, she said. I thought I was being fair. We never talked about it, I pointed out gently. And kids perceive things differently than adults intend them. Still, she sighed, I should have seen the competition building between you. I should have addressed it. We spoke for nearly an hour, beginning the painful but necessary process of examining family patterns that had gone unquestioned for decades. At 2 p.m. sharp, I entered the coffee shop to find Rachel and Marcus already seated in a corner booth. Rachel's eyes were red-rimmed from crying, and Marcus looked like he hadn't slept. I ordered a black coffee and joined them, an awkward silence settling over the table. Marcus spoke first. Thank you for meeting us. Last night was not our finest moment. Rachel stared into her latte without speaking. I think we need to be honest about the situation, I said, deciding directness was our only path forward. Marcus nodded. You're right. The truth is, we've been living beyond our means for years. The house, the schools, the vacations, it all looked good on social media, but we've been drowning in debt. Why didn't you say something sooner? I asked. Before it got so bad? Rachel finally looked up. Because admitting failure isn't exactly easy, she said, her voice hoarse. Especially to your little brother who seems to succeed at everything. I bit back a retort about how my success came from years of 60-hour work weeks and reinvested profits. This wasn't the time for defensiveness. I never saw helping you as fishing you out of failure, I said instead. I saw it as family supporting family. While I treated you terribly. Rachel admitted reluctantly. I've been horrible to you, Ethan. I can see that now. Her admission surprised me. I'd expected more defensiveness, more deflection. What changed overnight? I asked cautiously. Marcus answered, we had a long talk after everyone left. About our finances, about our marriage, about the example we're setting for the kids. Emma asked if we were going to lose the house, Rachel added, her voice breaking slightly. I realized what my pride has been costing everyone. I took a sip of my coffee, considering my next words carefully. I don't want to cut you off financially. That was never my intention. But I can't continue with the current arrangement either. We understand, Marcus said quickly. We've already discussed downsizing. The house is too expensive anyway, and that's not what I meant, I interrupted. I'm willing to continue helping with the mortgage temporarily, but with conditions. Rachel looked up, wariness and hope mingling in her expression. What kind of conditions? First, complete financial transparency. I want to see your budget, all your debts, everything. Marcus nodded. That's fair. Second, no more financial band-aids. We create a plan to get you to self-sufficiency, including career counseling for both of you if needed. I've already applied for 3 jobs, Marcus said. And Rachel's updating her resume to return to work. Third, I continued, family therapy. Rachel's eyebrows shot up. Therapy? Yes. Last night made it clear that we have decades of misunderstandings and resentments to work through. Not just between us, but with Mom too. Mom doesn't need to be burdened with this. Rachel protested. Mom is already burdened by it, I countered. She spent this morning crying because she feels she failed us both. She deserves to be part of the healing process. Rachel fell silent, considering this. And finally, I concluded, I need you to understand that my financial success doesn't make me the enemy. I've worked hard for what I have. And I'm allowed to enjoy it without being made to feel guilty. Rachel looked genuinely ashamed. The things I said last night. I didn't mean all of them. I was embarrassed and lashing out. Some of it you meant, I said quietly. The part about feeling like you peaked in high school while watching me build a successful business. The part about feeling judged for prioritizing family over career. Those feelings don't come from nowhere. She nodded slowly. Maybe you're right about therapy. Marcus reached for her hand. We need help, Rach. Not just financially, but with all of this. So what happens now? She asked, looking between her husband and me. Now we make a plan, I said. A real one. With professional help. Financial counseling for your household budget. Family therapy for the deeper issues. And honest conversations instead of pretending everything's fine when it isn't. Rachel seemed to deflate slightly, the defensive posture she'd maintained for years finally giving way to something more vulnerable. I've been so jealous of you, she admitted quietly. And so ashamed of needing your help. It was easier to be angry than grateful. It wasn't a complete apology, but it was more honesty than I'd heard from my sister in years. It was a start. As we parted ways outside the coffee shop, Rachel surprised me with a quick, awkward hug. I am sorry, Ethan. For what it's worth. It's worth a lot, I told her. We're family. That hasn't changed. Driving home, I called Jessica to update her. So they agreed to counseling? Surprisingly, yes, I confirmed. We're meeting with a financial advisor next week. And I'm researching family therapists. I'm proud of you, she said warmly. Setting boundaries isn't easy, especially with family. It's long overdue, I admitted. For all of us. The following weekend, Mom and I attended the symphony as planned. During intermission, she turned to me with tears in her eyes. Rachel called me yesterday, she said. She told me about the therapy plan. She also said something I never thought I'd hear from her. What's that? That she was wrong about you. And that she's trying to change. I squeezed Mom's hand. We're all trying to change. That's what matters. As the orchestra resumed playing, I found myself hopeful for the first time in years that my relationship with Rachel might evolve into something healthier, for all our sakes. The weeks following the dinner confrontation unfolded with a series of difficult but necessary conversations. True to our agreement, Rachel and Marcus met with me at a financial advisor's office the following Thursday. Spreading their financial documents across the advisor's desk was clearly humiliating for Rachel, but she endured it with newfound determination. "This is worse than I thought," the advisor, Diane, remarked as she reviewed their situation. "You're carrying nearly $60,000 in credit card debt on top of your mortgage, auto loans, and children's tuition." Marcus nodded grimly. "We kept thinking we'd catch up eventually, without significant changes." "That's not realistic," Diane said bluntly. "You're spending about 30% more than your current income each month." I watched my sister's face as the reality of their situation was laid bare in spreadsheets and projections. The shame was evident, but so was something else: relief. The secret was out. The pretense was over. "What do we do?" Rachel asked, her voice small but steady. Diane outlined a comprehensive plan, refinancing their mortgage to a lower rate, which I agreed to co-sign. Consolidating their credit card debt, creating a strict monthly budget. And most difficult for Rachel, selling one of their cars and transferring Emma from private to public school for her upcoming high school years. "Josh can finish middle school where he is," Diane suggested, "but the high school tuition is simply not sustainable right now." I expected Rachel to resist, but she surprised me. "Emma's been struggling socially at her current school anyway," she admitted. "The pressure there is intense. Maybe a change would be good for her. And I've already secured a job interview." Marcus added. "The salary would be about 70% of what I was making before, but it's a start." "I've been looking at part-time work options too," Rachel said, glancing at me as if expecting disapproval. Instead, I nodded encouragingly. "That sounds like a good step." Our first family therapy session the following week was even more challenging. Mom joined Rachel, Marcus, and me in the comfortable office of Dr. Carter, a family therapist specializing in adult sibling relationships. "I'd like to start by hearing from each of you about what you hope to gain from these sessions," Dr. Carter began. Mom spoke first, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "I want my children to heal their relationship, and to understand that I never meant to make either of them feel less loved. I want to stop feeling resentful of my brother's success," Rachel admitted, "and to understand why I've been so angry for so long." Marcus's goals were more practical. "I want our family to function better, for our children to see healthy relationships between adults." When my turn came, I considered carefully. "I want to build a new relationship with my sister, not based on childhood dynamics or financial dependence, but on who we are as adults." Over the next hour, Dr. Carter guided us through a structured conversation about our perceptions of childhood. The differences were startling. "I always felt I had to be perfect," Rachel explained. "After Dad left, Mom was so sad, and being the successful, put-together daughter seemed like the only way to make her happy. I just wanted someone to notice me," I countered. Rachel was the star, the one everyone praised. I felt invisible unless I achieved something exceptional. Mom listened with tears streaming down her face. "I had no idea you both felt so much pressure in different ways," she said. "After your father left, I was just trying to keep our family together. I never meant to create this competition." "The competition was already there," Dr. Carter noted gently. "Siblings often compete for parental attention and approval. The divorce likely intensified existing patterns." By the end of the session, we had homework. Mom would write letters to each of us expressing what she appreciated about us growing up. Rachel and I would each list 5 positive memories of one another from childhood. "This feels like kindergarten work," Rachel muttered as we left. "Sometimes we need to go back to basics, Dr. Carter replied with a knowing smile. Surprisingly, the exercise proved powerful. Reading Mom's letters the following week, hearing how she'd admired my resilience and Rachel's compassion in ways neither of us had recognized, offered new perspectives on our shared past. Even more unexpected were the memories Rachel and I shared. She remembered how I'd defended her against neighborhood bullies when she was in 8th grade, something I'd forgotten entirely. I recalled how she'd helped me prepare for my first job interview, spending hours coaching me on questions and appropriate responses. We weren't always at odds, Dr. Carter observed. These positive memories provide foundation stones for rebuilding. Outside of therapy, practical changes were taking shape. Rachel secured a part-time position at a local interior design firm, leveraging her eye for decor into a potential career path. Marcus accepted the job offer, with a promise of review after 6 months. They sold their second car and worked with Emma to prepare her for transferring schools in the fall. I continued paying half their mortgage, but with a written agreement and end date, 18 months. By which time they would either refinance solely in their names or downsize to a more affordable home. The transparency brought a new dynamics to our relationship. Without the shadow of secret financial dependence, we could interact more honestly. One Sunday, about a month after the dinner incident, Jessica and I invited Rachel's family over for a casual lunch. It was the first social gathering since the confrontation, and I was admittedly nervous about how it would go. "The place looks great," Rachel commented as she entered my condo, her tone genuine rather than competitive. "You've always had good taste." "Thanks," I replied, a bit taken aback by the compliment. Jessica helped with the recent redecorating. "The blue accent wall was all Ethan," Jessica corrected, smiling. "I wanted gray." "The blue is perfect," Rachel affirmed, exchanging a friendly glance with Jessica. "It brings out the view." Throughout lunch, I watched my sister carefully. The sharp edges that had characterized her behavior for years seemed softened. She listened more, interrupted less, and didn't make a single cutting remark about my career or lifestyle. When the kids went to watch TV in the living room, Rachel leaned forward slightly. "I've been meaning to tell you," Emma asked if you might help her with a computer science project. "She's thinking about taking a programming elective next year." "I'd love to," I said, genuinely pleased. "Anytime." And she continued, a slight flush coloring her cheeks, "I wanted to thank you. Not just for the financial help, but for forcing us to face reality. It's been hard, but also freeing." Marcus nodded in agreement. "We've had more honest conversations in the past month than in years." "How are the kids adjusting to the changes?" Jessica asked. "Better than we expected," Rachel admitted. "They were worried at first, but seeing us with an actual plan instead of constant stress seems to have reassured them." As they prepared to leave later that afternoon, Rachel surprised me with a genuine hug. "We're going to be okay," she whispered. "All of us." I believed her. 6 months after the fateful dinner that upended our family dynamics, we gathered again, this time at my condo. I'd hosted Thanksgiving dinner, with Jessica and I preparing most of the meal, but Rachel contributing her famous apple pie and cranberry relish. The atmosphere couldn't have been more different from Mom's birthday disaster. Rachel and Marcus arrived right on time, the children carrying small gifts for Jessica and me, handmade candles Emma had crafted in her new school's art program. The financial discipline of the past months had yielded measurable results. They'd paid off 2 credit cards completely, and Marcus had received the promised salary review and modest raise. "The firm loves Rachel's designs," Marcus shared as we sat down to dinner. "They've asked her to increase to 30 hours weekly starting in January." Rachel smiled, a genuine expression without the tight anxiety that had previously shadowed her face. "The flexibility works perfectly with the kids' schedules. And I'm actually enjoying using my creative skills again." Mom beamed at her daughter. "I always knew you had artistic talent. Remember those room makeovers you used to do as a teenager?" "That's right." Rachel laughed. "I was constantly rearranging furniture and making Dad crazy with paint samples." The easy reference to our father without bitterness marked another small healing. Through therapy, we'd begun to process our complicated feelings about Dad's abandonment and later attempts at reconciliation before his death. "Emma has the same eye for design," I observed. Those candles show real artistic talent. Emma blushed at the compliment. Uncle Ethan helped me set up an online shop to sell them. I've made $87 so far. The entrepreneur gene runs in the family, Jessica remarked. Rachel caught my eye across the table, and I braced instinctively for a barbed comment about capitalism or materialism. Instead, she smiled. Apparently it does. Later, as we enjoyed dessert in the living room, Uncle Frank and Aunt Martha joined us for coffee, having spent earlier Thanksgiving hours with Martha's sister. Well, this is certainly a more peaceful gathering than the last one I attended, Uncle Frank observed with his characteristic bluntness. Mom shot him a warning look, but Rachel laughed. It's okay, Mom. We can acknowledge the dinner disaster now. It led to important changes. Speaking of changes, I said, meeting Jessica's eye for confirmation before continuing. We have some news. Jessica nodded encouragingly. I've decided to restructure my company, I announced. I'm bringing in a COO to handle daily operations so I can focus on strategic growth and have more personal time. That's wonderful, Mom said. You've been working too hard for too long. There's more, I continued. Jessica and I are engaged. The news brought delighted exclamations and congratulations. Jessica showed off the simple but elegant ring we'd selected together. When's the wedding? Rachel asked after hugging us both. Next summer, Jessica replied. Nothing elaborate, probably just family and close friends at a venue outside the city. I'd like Emma to be a junior bridesmaid, if that's okay, Jessica added, looking to Rachel and Marcus for permission. The gesture visibly touched Rachel. She'd be honored. We all would. As the evening wound down, Rachel pulled me aside while Jessica showed Mom some preliminary wedding ideas. Remember when I accused you of being jealous of my family? She asked quietly. I nodded, the painful memory still fresh despite the months of healing. I was projecting, she admitted. I was the jealous one, not just of your success, but of your freedom to build life on your own terms. And now? I asked. Now I'm grateful for the life I have, she said thoughtfully. The kids, Marcus. Even the struggles that forced us to be honest with ourselves. But I'm also learning that I can have a career and a family. That success doesn't look the same for everyone. That's what I've been trying to tell you for years, I pointed out gently. I wasn't ready to hear it then, she acknowledged. I needed to hit bottom first. Our conversation was interrupted by Josh calling for his mother, but the brief exchange marked how far we'd come. The mortgage arrangement continued as planned, but with a significant difference. Rachel and Marcus now treated it as a formal loan with proper documentation, making consistent additional payments toward principal when possible. Their goal of full financial independence remained on track for the 18-month timeline. Our monthly family therapy sessions had decreased to bi-monthly, focusing less on past wounds and more on building healthier communication patterns. Mom had found her voice in these sessions too, speaking more openly about her own struggles as a suddenly single parent after decades of marriage. One evening in early December, Jessica and I met Mom for dinner at her favorite restaurant. I've been thinking a lot about family lately, Mom said as we waited for dessert. About the mistakes I made and the things I got right. Mom, you don't need to, I began. But she held up her hand. Let me finish, Ethan. I want both my children to know something important. The hardest part of parenting is recognizing that your children are different people with different needs. I thought treating you and Rachel exactly the same was fairness. But what you each needed from me was different. She took a sip of her tea before continuing. Rachel needed more independence, more room to make mistakes. You needed more acknowledgement, more recognition of your quiet achievements. We all did the best we could with what we knew at the time, I said, reaching for her hand. That's the most valuable lesson in all this, Jessica observed. Understanding that people's actions make sense from their perspective, even when that perspective is limited or flawed. Mom smiled at my fiancé. You're going to be a wonderful addition to this imperfect family of ours. As Christmas approached, Rachel suggested we revive a childhood tradition, looking at holiday light displays together as a family. On a crisp December evening, we piled into 2 cars and toured the most elaborately decorated neighborhoods, the children rating displays on creativity and execution. Watching Rachel laugh with Jessica as they debated the merits of a particularly over-the-top Rudolph scene, I reflected on the journey of the past 6 months. The painful confrontation at Mom's birthday dinner had lanced a festering wound in our family, one that had been ignored for decades while silently poisoning our relationships. The healing wasn't complete, and perhaps never would be entirely. Rachel still occasionally made comments revealing her insecurities, and I sometimes found myself bracing for attacks that no longer came. Old habits died hard. But we were building something new on the foundation of painful honesty, a family relationship based on who we actually were, not childhood roles or resentments. As we gathered for hot chocolate afterward, Emma asked innocently, "Remember last year when everyone was fighting at Grandma's birthday? Are you guys friends now?" Rachel and I exchanged glances over our steaming mugs. "We're brother and sister," Rachel answered thoughtfully. "Sometimes that's complicated. But we're learning to be better at it. The important thing," I added, "is that we keep trying. Family takes work, but it's worth it." Later that night, as Jessica and I walked toward our car, she squeezed my hand. "You know what I admire most about how you handled all this? My incredible patience?" I joked. "Your willingness to help without enabling," she corrected. "You didn't just throw money at the problem or walk away completely. You offered support with accountability." Her observation crystallized something I had been feeling but hadn't articulated. True family support wasn't about blank checks or blind loyalty. It was about helping others grow, even when growth was painful. The mortgage statements would continue coming for another year. The therapy sessions would continue revealing uncomfortable truths, and Rachel and I would undoubtedly have disagreements in the future. But the foundations had shifted from resentment and competition to something approaching mutual respect. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do for family is speak the truth, even when it hurts. And sometimes the bravest thing we can do is listen when that truth is about ourselves. Have you ever had to confront a difficult truth in your family? How did you handle it? Let me know in the comments below, and if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life family stories. Remember, even the most broken family dynamics can heal with honesty, boundaries, and mutual respect. Thank you for listening, and I wish you courage in your own family journey.